Down we go. Okay.
Resto mod is not always all about putting big engines in and modern braking systems.
Oh, feels good.
Sometimes it's more subtle. For instance, changing over an old AM radio with tubes in it to modern Bluetooth appliances.
Looks like a jukebox.
It is.
It's cool.
You know, other things. People want digital dashboards.
Looks a lot cleaner in here.
They even want coffee cup holders in their cars.
It's just about done.
Yeah.
One of the most important things that the staff here can contribute is an ability to adapt when those things don't exist. There's not going to be that much on the outside that will tell people what's on the inside. And, you know, that's the nature of resto modding.
Sometimes cars like them into us for not major alterations, but to make them more livable. Packard's a perfect example of that.
There she is. Today I'm working on the 1953 Packard, just finishing up installing the radio. The radio was refurbished, so essentially what they did was they keep the old style of the radio, so it has that nice old aesthetic look to it, but it has all the new functions like Bluetooth, auxiliary, all the new fun stuff that makes it a lot more user-friendly. And now I'm just trying to squeeze it back in here. It's unfortunate because it still weighs a ton, just like it did when it came out.
This Packard has received multiple upgrades. A steering wheel, gas tank, new brakes, and now it's getting the new radio.
I'm trying not to scratch any of the new faces that they put on there. Boy. I think it's gonna fit okay. So far, so good. Yeah, there's a lot of wires too, which is unfortunately the downside of having all the new functions to it. But you know, it'll make the customer happy and it'll make it a lot easier to scroll through music and radio stations. So the last step now is just to turn on the radio, make sure that all the functions are operational for them, and then it's good to go. Radio's on, nice and working. So the Bluetooth did work.
Now this Packard radio is all digital, Bluetooth, hands-free. 53 Packard's a beautiful vehicle. It looks great, it's running great, just like it would have coming out of the factory. The 68 Dodge Charger, the second generation Charger, came in. The customer had spent a lot of money on this car, couldn't get it running right, so he brought it here so that we could take a look at it. This thing came in with a fuel injection system on it that was pretty much blown up. So Ron had to replace the fuel injection with a carburetor. So after Ron replaced the carburetor and got this thing running, we found that the rockers were ticking pretty bad in it.
And yesterday I had it running outside and it was a little tick turned into a very large tick.
Started up, it sounded like a sewing machine.
So I'm just doing a little investigating now and seeing what's going on here. Like it's an expensive brand new engine, but a lot of money spent on this stroker. It's 500 cubic inch, big block Mopar here. It's a pretty cool engine. So I gotta figure out, was this something that fell out of adjustment? Or we could have faulty lifters, which means I'd have to take the intake off and the top of the engine off to get to the lifters. So now I'm gonna turn over to get my exhaust valve here to fully open and then start to close. I turn it over because I have to get the lifter in the base circle of the cam to do the adjustment. If it's up on the lobe or up on the heel, you can't do it. I adjust the lifter until I have zero lash, they call it. I got lash there. That means that there's no clearance between the rocker and the valve here. Here, I can turn this back. I got clearance. You hear that noise, that's the type of the noise we had. So I turn that to zero it out, so I have zero lash. And then I'm gonna give it a 3/4 of a turn. It's a hydraulic lifter, so you just preload them. We give them a turn.
You need clearance in the rockers on these and the preset on them, the preload, so that you have space in there. So you have a few thousandths of an inch for oil, lubrication.
Whoever set this up before, I think they set it at very little lash, very little preload.
If they're not adjusted properly, you can have damage very easily. I mean, it's the same with anything else. The engineers made them a certain way, and that's the way they're supposed to be.
So So let's just see if I can determine how much preload we have on there. Like nothing, right? Like, you know,
no preload.
Already I'm 0. So very, very little. Maybe an 1/8 of a turner on them if.
Well, that would explain the rattle.
That's what I'm thinking. Give it that 3/4 and see how it sounds.
Yeah, with the cam specs that
not
they
gonna
gave
kill
us, that's
anything.
all we can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice rockers, though.
Everything.
Wow.
Yeah, hopefully this adjustment fixes it up. And if it not, well, then we got some issues inside the engine with faulty roller or faulty lifter. What I have to do now is put it back together and road test it.
Originally, this 67 Firebird would have came with a 3-speed automatic, maybe a 3 on the floor, even a 4-speed if it was a fancy one. But we've modified the car to take a 6-speed transmission, so you get overdrive and you still have all the fun of the bottom 4 gears. Because there's so many modifications from the engine, driveline, transmission, we've had a custom drive shaft built for this car. So just make sure this fits in between the exhaust. This one's pretty easy. We did some pre-thinking about this. I got rid of the H-pipe in this one. We don't need that. The company who supplied the transmission custom made a drive shaft for us to our specific length, and then we put heavy-duty yokes on each end to accommodate the power that this car has. So I'm just making sure it clears in between the exhaust pipes. Look at that, nice clearance. It is tight, but it doesn't touch between the exhaust pipes there. We're good. It's perfect. I found a couple straps in a box upstairs that'll fit this particular application. Brand new ones even. Just tighten these guys up and then set this car on its wheels, and I'm done. The U-joint straps are in, drive shaft's in, exhaust is done. Everything under the car is looking awesome. Ready to move on to the next stage.
So we got to find the idle. I don't see another screw. Should be 2 screws, but this carburetor is a little different.
The 67 Firebird, it's sitting a little bit tall right now, so we're gonna just dial that in.
Okay, you know what, though? We got to get the idle down a little bit. It's at 920, so we want to get the RPM down.
Well, Tommy's got the Packard carburetor rebuilt and reinstalled, so I got Ron and him to get on it, set the timing, set up the carb, and get it ready for the road test.
So we had to get this car running good because Greg wants to get it out for a test ride. No, it went the wrong way.
I'm excited to learn from Ron, see what he has to teach me.
By getting somebody with a lot more experience like Ron, he's going to learn about the timing, learn about the setup. This is something that he won't forget.
Well, when we first fired the car up, a fast idle was a little bit high. But it seems to run pretty good other than the higher idle. When the engine first starts when it's cold, you want to have the idle up a little bit high to keep the engine running so it doesn't stall. And once it warms up, then it kicks down on the small cam and then you adjust your base idle. There's got to be another idle adjustment we're missing then. Because that's the fast idle cam. So we got to find the idle. Because it's a little high. But there is nothing over here though, is there?
I don't think so.
I don't see another screw. Should be 2 screws, one for the fast idle, one for the actual idle adjustment. But this carburetor is a little different.
I'd like to get the 67 Firebird at a really cool ride height. It's sitting a little bit tall right now, so we're gonna just dial that in. 30¼ inches to the wheel well. So ideally, we'd like to be around 28 inches. I think a car looks cooler when it's a little bit lower. That's the first thing I'll do when I start building a car is dial in the ride height, and then you can build off of that. Should be pretty straightforward.
The 67 Firebird came in, it looked like a 4-wheel drive. It was all jacked up and looked strange. We want it to be a little bit lower, a little bit, meaner looking, a little sleeker looking.
So I've got the rear diff just suspended on the jack there, but it is actually hanging down. So these are the U-bolts I've got to undo. Even though we get paid by the hour, I like to use power tools. So I'm gonna achieve this sort of an old school way. It's a lowering block. It's just a mechanical spacer, basically, that I'm gonna put between the drive axle and the leaf spring.
It gets mounted between the spring and the axle, which lifts the axle, which drops the car. Hopefully it gets to the right height where it should be.
This bottom plate doesn't want to just pop off. I was hoping it would just fall off at this point. Ooh. I feel like this plate's just hanging up on the threads of the U-bolt. A little bit of friction. Maybe I will resort to violence. It did move, but I want it to move more. So you can see in here at the back, there's a gap that's developing in between the axle and the leaf spring. So what I'm gonna do is put an aluminum spacer in there. That's gonna raise the axle in proportion to the vehicle.
Oh, can you see it?
Yeah, you gotta go from behind to get.
Wow, they don't make that easy to get at, do they?
There we go.
Beautiful. Well, we're going on a little road test. So dialing in the curb idle was a little bit of a problem because we couldn't find the adjustment screw. So Tommy found where the location of the screw is.
I found the screw.
Oh, can you see it?
Yeah, you gotta go from behind to spin it. It's like down over there.
Oh man, how do you?
Oh, I never saw it. You can feel it.
Okay, there it is. Wow. They don't make that easy to get at, do they? Besides, so it was hard to get to. You couldn't see it. See if we get lucky here. Half a turn. Okay. Start them up, Tom. We're gonna make this thing purr. Close. I gotta come up a little bit. We want to see 500.
We're at 500. Oh, you went too far.
What's it at?
525.
Good enough. Like, just leave it there. So now that we got the curb idle set properly, the rest of the setup should go pretty easily now. Now you're gonna adjust the mixture. You do this. Slowly turn in your mixture screws.
Turn in?
One, yeah. Slowly turn it in until you start to hear the engine flutter. Keep going, turn. Sorry, keep turning. Tom's good. Well, he's into learning and wants to learn, so he'll listen to somebody that's got experience. Oh, okay. Hear it dwindle off a little bit. Come back. A little more. Okay, do the other one, and we'll go back.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's good.
Oh, she's starting to purr. Look at that. Throw it in gear. See how it feels. Sounds pretty good.
Yeah. It's not stalling out when we shift like before.
It was stalling. Okay. So we got the Packard purring like a kitten here. A few little adjustments and the thing's running the best it's ever has.
Making the turn. There we go.
Okay, contact?
Yeah. Ooh, sounded pretty good when he started it up. I think it's 100% better.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll take it out for a road test and make sure that it is up to par. Sounds good. Get her warm.
Yeah. Drive it, see how it works. Well, we're going on a little road test. Time to take this car for a little ride and see how it's working. It's a brand new car. It's got like 150 kilometers on it. So we want to make sure that the brakes are working and the steering's working and that there's no major rattles. The engine sounds pretty good. I readjusted all the lifters and got rid of that tapping sound. We're steady at 180 degrees. The oil pressure is 75 pounds, so feels pretty good. Well, it's new just because the car was completely rebuilt. All the body work was done. It's got all new suspension, new engine, new transmission, new differential. Everything's brand new on this car. Oh, yeah. It's built nice. Spent a lot of money on this car. It's got all kinds of trick parts. All the suspension, front and rear, is all aftermarket. Coilovers, rack and pinion steering. It's smoother than I thought. I thought with the coilover shots and stuff, this was going to give you like a bone-jarring ride, but the ride's good.
Love to get this car back to the customer. He's been really patient, and the last few years hasn't driven it at all. So he's excited to get some time in the seat. You know, that's what it's all about.
What's happening, boss man?
I don't know, you tell me.
She's stiff, eh? This thing is rigid.
It's a terrible thing that I have to do to go out in the sunshine in a convertible. I mean, it is awesome. Talon's working on lowering the Firebird to give it a sleeker look.
So this is the spacer I'm going to install in between the leaf spring and the axle. A good adjustment would be about 3 inches on this car. There's this little eyelet that centers it on the, there's a centering pin on the leaf spring itself. So there you feel that locked in there. So now I'll just lower the diff back down. And sort of the opposite, I got to get that top alignment pin sit into the diff there. Potentially, a downside could be that you run out into a clearance issue if you're going over large speed bumps, but really, it's going to improve the handling of the car by lowering the center of gravity. Nice. And longer U-bolts to accommodate the extra distance here. I imagine these will be quite a bit too long, so I'll have to cut them once we're happy with the ride height. Okay, lowering blocks in. Now I just gotta jack the diff up and get the shock back on. When you're putting hardware in a vehicle, the car will go faster if you put the head of the bolt at the front and you put the threads towards the back. So if you put it this way, it catches air and creates a drag. It's really important speed stuff. Okay, I'm gonna slap the wheel back on and we'll see how this side's doing for ride height. What's happening, boss man?
I don't know, you tell me.
Well, I got this side lowered. I think it looks way better,
Way better.
right? Gives
Way
it that
better.
sort of sexy stance.
Yeah, excellent.
I mean, that the wheel fits nicely in here.
I'm thrilled with that height. I mean, the suspension on this thing is as hard as a rock,
She's stiff, eh? This thing is rigid.
but it's gonna handle great. This thing's gonna set and work well.
Oh my God, look at the spacing, just perfect.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. It's way better.
Yeah, it looks cool, eh?
What's that, 2 inches?
I think that was 3.
Yeah, once we get the suspension set, maybe we can get this thing up and running.
That'll be cool. I'm really happy with the way it looks now. It's got a cool stance to it, so I'm gonna move on to the front.
Well, the customer's gonna be happy with the stance. I mean, that was one of the things when he brought it in was the main thing. He said, man, I just hate how high it sits. Even with the big rims and the low profile tires on it, it just makes the car. I gotta take the 53 Packard out for a road test. We just finished putting things back together on it. I'm gonna make sure it's good and get it ready to send home. See how the little upgrades did and see how this beautiful wheel is gonna work out. It's a terrible thing that I have to do to go out in the sunshine in a convertible, especially a 53 Caribbean. That steering wheel is just friggin' gorgeous. looks like it's been in here since day one. Barry did his job, painted it, made it a nice ivory color. You know, Talon did the beautiful inlays, polished them all up. Kalev made the design. Beauty. I'm watching the heat gauge for the most part. The customer drove it, had some fluid come out the overflow of the rad, and he was concerned about the heat. It's working really well. It's running the way it should. I want to make sure that, you know, it's going through the gears and that everything is working the way it should for him so he can take it and enjoy it for the rest of the summer. This thing just feels great. It is just a big, beautiful boat. I mean, really, it doesn't matter about the road. This thing is just floats down it. You know, the Packard has always been that level. You know, say Packard, you know that it is going to be quality. You know it's going to have that ride that doesn't match anything else. And that's what it was designed for. I mean, it is awesome. I mean, it's just a joy. I didn't want to stop driving.